Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And it brings me such great pleasure to introduce, I prefer to say Dr. Carlos Concepcion, because the work that he does is phenomenal, which you will see for yourself. So here's a little bit about our guest. He grew up in New York City, but also spent significant parts of his childhood in the native Dominican Republic. Baseball was everything. And for any Dominican boy growing up in the 60s and 70s, he was no different. He started playing with the YMCA when he was 9 years old and was part of a losing team that pretty much, never really had a chance. But eventually at 13, he made it to the winning team with a great coach, Coach Joe, right? That helped him become an MVP in 1972. This peak experience from his childhood shaped his passion for understanding how to nurture greatness, both in himself and in others. He became a vegetarian at 15 years old, a yoga practitioner, and a teacher at 16. That year, he made a transformative pilgrimage to Peru, joining 3,000 yoga practitioners and jogging all the way up to Machu Picchu. 50 years later, his major passions remain deepening his yoga practice and promoting the healing power of simple, whole vegetarian foods. He has spent the last several decades reading, translating, and discussing the work of Dr. Serge Renaud de la Ferrer, who he considered his guru. This focus led him to become certified in biomagnetic yoga initiation from Simplified Kundalini Yoga, SKY, the theory Maharishi system, which mirrors most closely to the yoga proposed by de la Ferrer. He is living and working in the Dominican Republic, writing his book to promote universal education, LaserEduLogics, Liberate Your Mind and Body with the liberal arts, yoga, and Kabbalah. I welcome Carlos Concepcion.
Thank you, Dr. Enolia. So kind and gracious of you to have me participate in this podcast. Been looking forward to this.
So excited to be here with you.
Yes.
So excited. And you think that my first question is going to be a technical one, but I have to tell you that you being Dominican, if I didn't give you the respect of asking you the first thing about baseball and your love of baseball, I would be remiss, because I know how much baseball is a part of Dominican culture and love, and children all over the world love baseball. And I have to ask you this one first question, which is, who was your favorite baseball hero?
I gotta say, it was Juan Marichal, exactly at the At that time, I didn't have any preference. I grew up in the States. I was born in New Jersey, but watching 1969 was also the New York Mets. But in 72, I had already acquired this visual education from watching the master pitchers. And Juan Marichal had a style that it was just absolutely amazing. And I was just glued to the TV observing him. And when I started pitching with this master coach, Joe, I actually reproduced every movement that I had observed for over, 3 or 4 years. I've been observing him. And when I got on the mound myself, I started reproducing the exact movements. And I think that was a key: observation, visualization, and then reproduction, recreation, appropriation of your individual by yourself of the great performers. And that's how it got me started. It was Juan Marichal, a Dominican great pitcher. Yes.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And little people know this about me, but I have 2 boys. And at the time when I was married with my husband, our boys went through baseball from T-ball all the way through to travel league etc., until they were in college. And I learned how to coach baseball so that I could participate with my sons. And I have a love of baseball, and my mom loved baseball. We were a baseball household. So that's something that only a person who really participates can appreciate the strategy of baseball.
Yes, exactly. And talk about strategic thinking. It took me 27 years actually to figure out what had happened, how a kid, from the ghettos of New York City, which at that time was really crime infested, and we, a way of playing sport and being guided, by these coaches. I found myself actually discovering this talent, because for many years it was dormant. I was playing right field for 3-4 years until
Okay.
Coach Joe actually identified that I had an arm. And of course, what do you do in right field for so many years? Well, you develop an arm and you talk home plate, right? But nobody had discovered that before. It takes, great coaches. I read this great book. It's called What Great Managers Do Differently.
Mm-hmm.
And by Buckingham, and these authors, they identify, they studied over 500 great managers in Fortune 500 companies to identify the difference between great managers and mediocre managers. And the sole difference that they found was that the great managers identify human talent. And not only do identify the human talent, but they place it where it's going to fructify. And they place it in the role that they will bring out their talent. And they how do you say, extend or expand on the knowledge and the skill, because they distinguish between knowledge, skill, and talent, right? Knowledge you could acquire, skill you can acquire, but talent is inborn. It's really the way your brain is wired up. And that needs a particular different treatment. And you have to find your talent, your strengths, and then you put it in the area of work or play, or that it will fructify. And that's exactly what he did. Had I stayed out in right field or where I was for 4 years, I would have never discovered I was a pitcher. And so he placed me with that arm, and he gave me some skills. He gave me the different types of pitches that I should employ. But it was my talent that actually put it to work, and it just flourished. So that was my first big lesson, right, in coaching, in the importance of coaching, and by extension, the concept of a guru, because in yoga it is the same principle. Of course, the guru is on a spiritual, high level inner work, as opposed to just coaching your muscles or coaching your brain or coaching on the exterior, on the external work, right? And so guru is a much more advanced inner, transcendental inner work that applies the principles of coaching, but on a whole different level. And that's where I have taken it with my work.
And it applies the difference in not just the high levels, but the self-discipline. The self-discipline is a must. And this is wonderful, because I want your story to progress. You have this phenomenal strategic mind. All of the different facets that come with yoga is very, very personalized. What made you lean towards the type of yoga that you lean towards? And was that your initial choice? Because you listed sky yoga.
Well, excellent question. Simplified Kundalini Yoga is the end of a 50-year plus journey in this inquiry in the self-discipline of yoga practice, which incidentally I transitioned from baseball because I love physical culture. And I discovered that tapping into high performance what goes well and along with high physical workout. So when I discovered Dr. De La Ferriera at 15, 16, I embraced the physical work of Hatha yoga. And because that then led me to work on my body on a higher level. Simply, I was working with muscles, working with, doing 100 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, and then running 3 miles a day. That level of workout, then in yoga, then you go inward. You work the muscle, you work the nervous system, and you work your endocrine system. And so that was the dimension that brought in the high physical work. But with simplified Kundalini yoga, we go to the highest level of inner work, which is working with the inner fire of Kundalini and the biomagnetic spectrum that includes, the whole universe, because it aligns like biomagnetics, as you will see, it aligns the biomagnetic field of the person with the geomagnetic field of the earth. But the geomagnetic field of the earth is an extension of the heliomagnetic field of the sun. And the sun is connected to the magnetic fields of the galaxies. And the whole universe is aligned and ordered and kept in this beautiful harmony through these magnetic fields, the vortex. And then you discover through simplified Kundalini yoga that the chakras themselves are magnetic wheels that are connected through the spectrum to this whole field, to the universal field. The individual and the universe are now aligned, connecting in harmony. That's the principle of yoga, connecting, harmonizing, balancing the individual with the universe. And so a lot of our problems, of course, emerge, sickness, it's an incoherency, a disconnection that the modern society, and even in old, the lack of knowledge, ignorance is really the main culprit here, that the ignorance of the laws of nature and how to keep ourselves in balance with them, which is what yoga brings, and also the nutrition and philosophies. All of this brings us to that awareness. And that's why education is so fundamental, to clarify, to illuminate that knowledge base. And so that we can then do what we need to do to heal and to illuminate and to come to full fruition, discover ourselves.
So talk to us about the movement through yoga to the higher levels, because me not being a higher level, but understanding that the levels in which I've practiced yoga, how it opens up the energy centers, how it leaves a euphoria after you've executed through movement, and just when you complete a section of yoga or a movement or however you term it, that it really does open up something that is just unseen within the energy centers of the body, that it's hard to explain, but you feel it when you've mastered certain poses, you've mastered certain practices within it. How did that impact you, and where did that lead you?
Well, it was an inquiry, right? I have a quest. I have been on this quest first to understand the whole foundation of the science, the biology, the psychology, the philosophy of yoga practice. Thanks to Dr. De La Ferriera, who was my first primary exemplar of a universally educated person, right? In other words, not simply a generalist in the liberal arts sense that we use it today, but in a truly, genuinely, universally educated person who takes the entire body of knowledge of history and philosophy and science and puts it together in a coherent format, so that then you can apply it to self-understanding. You can apply it to ontological self-realization. And so, to go from simply a physical practice like it's been promoted in the United States, yoga as a, physical culture or as another sport, right? To the higher levels of practice, then you need a guru. Why? Because you need somebody who's already been there. When you're going to plunge in, you need the guidance and you need the protection and you need the tools, right? It's like if you're sick or you need energy, so the guru actually transmits the power. This is what we call in tradition initiation. It's a process of initiation. In other words, where you are transmitted the power to ignite. It's like one fire lighting up another fire. Okay. And then making sure that fire does not burn you. Making sure that fire does not burn your organs or burn any other, that fire is like nuclear energy. You have to know the principles of engineering of nuclear power so that you can create a nuclear reactor in which that energy can be managed and directed and protected from harming other entities or harming the society. So this is science. It's a vital science. And you need the masters of that science to guide you through the process. And this is why the competent guru, okay? Because there are many people who self-proclaim, being this and being that. But this is where due diligence and where critical thinking comes in, where you have to know the qualifications, you have to know the requirement. And for that, you need to understand the tradition, the traditional books, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Giranda Samhita, the Bhagavad Gita, or the Upanishads, the Vedas. And that's on the Eastern side. In our system,
Right.
We also include the Western masters, and that includes Plato and Socrates and Aristotle and the history of Western wisdom. And so once you have that in education, universal educational foundation, you have now the critical eye to then investigate and find out who's who, right? And so once you understand, I suffered a lot precisely because I didn't have all that knowledge and I wound up, following incompetent, gurus. And therefore, for many decades, I practiced, but it's like no results. It's like shooting blanks, right? You don't hit the target, right?
Right.
And this is where it dawned on me, going back to that idea of the coach. I had an incompetent coach for 3 or 4 years. So I could not hit the target of being the full tapping into the full potential, because only one who has mastered the full potential, who has reached the goal that you want, can enable you or guide you or tap into you or transmute the power to be able to do that. And this is where the Vedatiri school finally gave me the tools and gave me the initiation, the transmission, because this is a magnetic power transfer. Okay. It's like the mom feeds the baby. She has to give the baby the milk. She has to give the baby the brain power through her own breast. She nurtures the nervous system. And so the guru actually empowers your nervous system to withstand the awakening. And the guide is then to take it appropriately. Because Kundalini, for example, which is the ultimate power, the Shakti, the universal Shakti, the Shekinah in Hebrew.
Right.
Of the that flows through the whole universe. This flows through you, but it can only flow through you in a harmonious way. And so there's only one channel that Kundalini can go from, that when it's awakened from the sexual sources, from the sexual chakra. Okay, that's where she's housed potentially. It's like petroleum under the earth, right? Unless you have scientific knowledge or chemical knowledge or engineering knowledge, you cannot convert petroleum into combustible energy, right? So in a man,
Right.
the semen withholds the seed of that biomagnetic power. That has to be transformed through yogic exercises into ojas, which is what the Shakti is, the biomagnetic power. So that's what those exercises really do. That's what it's about. But you need careful and humble work and careful scientific work to do that correctly. And only the masters have that knowledge, you see. And that's how the Vedatiri system works, only through initiation. And there's 3 levels, there's 4 levels of initiation. One starts with the magnetic hands and the magnetic fingers that raises the Kundalini through the Sushumna Nadi. We have 72,000 nadis, which are openings through which the universal energy flows in our body. But there's 3 principal ones: the right, the left, and the central channel. And the central channel, through the vertical, the column, the vertebrae, in the Sushumna Nadi is the only channel that energy can flow through safely to the upper chakras, and then bring it back down through the Sushumna Nadi back to its house. And through that, it can then distribute through the vagus nerve and other channels. You can then distribute that energy. But those initiations, they start with the magnetic hands of the guru. Because of resonance, there's biomagnetic hands of the guru and the biomagnetic reception of your own system. Then by resonance, he activates it and then deposits it up in the Ajna chakra. Then comes the second initiation, where he brings the energy back down. That opens up the channel. Now you can do the work. It's like, it's the same principle even in baseball. You need the training. You need to know how to throw a pitch. You need to know how to throw a fastball, a curveball, a slider. And once you have that, then you can now go and perform. You see, this is the problem with most yoga practice now, is that, you go and you get some benefit. You get a lot of benefit just practicing as a sport. But you're not going to get to the ultimate benefit of self-realization and inner penetration to the higher realms of within yourself, unless you're given the secret, or the transmission, the entry, the initiation.
And really, this just guides us right beautifully into your work. LaserEduLogics. Liberate your mind, body with the liberal arts, yoga, and Kabbalah. Baseball, yoga, Kabbalah, laying a solid and strong foundation for your work and your book that you're writing. And that we've gone through the iterations of talking about your life in terms of the yoga, in terms of the baseball, and strategically just bringing that structure to the thinking of understanding how each piece harmoniously flows with the other as a building block to bring you to a precipice of being able to have this discussion. Because to me, I think the work is phenomenal. Would you please give our audience a understanding and a foundation of what you are terming as LaserEduLogics?
Yes. It was a good friend of mine who referred me to you. I got to honor her, Dr. Linda Teo. We met at this conference, at this course we took in biogeometry with Dr. Gilbert in North Carolina. And Dr. Gilbert is one of those universally educated persons, and I want to honor him too, because that's where I really started bringing this together. And the concept of the laser EduLogics, to me, is a trivium. A trivium of the liberal arts is grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And then there's a quadrivium of the traditional 7 liberal arts of arithmetic, geometry, music theory, and harmonics, and cosmology, or astronomy, astrology, archaeometry, depending on the level of advancement you do with the quadrivium. But the trivium of the LaserEduLogics was the sum total of all my research that I have gathered over 50 years. And the triangle is a very important figure because it's the first geometrical figure in the universe. A point is not a geometrical figure. A line is an extension in 2 dimensions. You know, in order to have a determination in physics, you need the triangle. So it's the first form, and this is why in all sacred traditions you have the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. So the Holy Trinity is at the foundation of spiritual and intellectual self-realization and physical realization. And so LaserEduLogics to me was the sum total, the sum total of this understanding that I come to. And why the laser? Why education? Why logic? Well, it turns out that it's the 3-way coming together leads to the truth or whatever you're searching for. In this case, the laser world emerged from my Kabbalistic studies. I was studying the biblical light. I was studying for many years how Christ said, "I am the light of the world," and Yahweh turned to Moses in Mount Sinai and told him, "I am the living fire." I am that verb to be.
I am.
Okay.
That's right.
The eternal. Yod, He, Vav, He. In Hebrew, it's Yod, I, and am, being, eternal. He who was, is, and forever will be. The eternal is the name of God. And so he manifests as this fire, right? This living fire, right? Light. And so all throughout, and before Abraham was, I am. In other words, that verb to be is both eternal and temporal. And this is where the whole notion of ego understanding and ego identity, we come to in consciousness. This is where consciousness starts in the Bible. So light, I've investigated the whole principles of light from Genesis to Revelations, and I investigated in Hebrew is Aleph, Vav, Resh. 3 letters equals in esoteric number system, which I will introduce people in, it has a value of 132. This 132 in 6 permutations, 123, 312, 321, 213, 231. If you permute it in the sigma form, in the 6 dimensions, these 6 directions of space, it's going to give you 166,500, a sigma. And so I went through this whole investigation of how the light in the Bible, the biblical light, what it really meant, not simply symbolically, but ontologically. In other words, what does it mean to be, to your being? How does your identity is derived from it? How are we connected individually with that being of Christ, Yahweh, and 12 turns out to be the key number in the whole Bible. 12 tribes, 12 disciples, the 12 gates of the New Jerusalem. That number 12 is omnipresent, but there's a mirror number, it's called 21. This mirror number, 1221, if you go into the atomic realms, you're going to find that photons are emitted when it goes from atomic level 2 to atomic level 1 in the shells that surround the nucleus of an atom. That's how light comes from electrons. Electrons fall from level 2 to level 1, you get emission of light. This is the light you see. light gets absorbed in the reverse when it goes from level 1 to level 2. So as you can see, that fundamental of those numbers are real, atomically, intellectually, philosophically, and religiously. At every level, you could look at it from any angle. And so, so this number kept me investigating. I took courses in crystallography, studied diamonds, studied gemology. I studied the inner structure, the geometry. What differentiates a diamond from a carbon? Yet they have the same carbon atom. But why is a diamond transparent and crystallizes the light? And yet the carbon, regular carbon, doesn't. Well, it's geometrical. It's geometry, the geometry of those numbers, how they arrange internally. The same way is with us. Why in yoga we practice the triangular position and the Siddha triangular position to meditate. These are perfect geometrical figures that harness and crystallize the inner light. And it works in nature and it works in us. And see, so this is how the Kabbalah combines with the yoga. Yoga works physically, externally, objectively on your physical body. Kabbalah works directly on your mind, subjectively, philosophically, phenomenologically. And so this integration, right, of the biblical light, then I kept investigating. I said, how is this light coming forth? Well, I discovered that most of our modern technologies come from crystallization of silicon, for example. That was the first advancement in silicon technology. Silicon is a six-figure silicia. It's the most abundant element. It's in sand. It's everywhere. But they took the silicon, silicia. That element has a six-figure geometrical composition. And now you could take that six-figure element and inscribe in it any information you want. And this is what the binary system does. This is what computer science does. They take information and they inscribe it in this substrate called silicon, and which is a six-figure geometrical figure. And so now you can now inscribe all the knowledge of the world through this binary logic. You can inscribe it in technology. So as I'm advancing this inquiry into how this light, this biblical light, is guiding humanity and manifesting itself in current modern day, because the omnipresence, the omniscience, and the omnipower of God is present everywhere. The knowledge of God, his presence, is everywhere. Omniscient, he knows everything. And I say he, but it's also she, because in Hebrew it's Yahweh Elohim, and that's a pair. This is why in the beginning it says we will create in our image. Where does that plural of God's name come from? Well, it's Yahweh, male, and Elohim, female. And the first word of the Bible is called Barashit. In Genesis, Barashit starts with a bet, a bet, and Barashit. Elohim. In other words, she created. You see that? Under the influence, under the connection and your connection with Yahweh. Yahweh's name appears in the second chapter, but he was already present in the first chapter with Elohim. In other words, male and female are the basic principles of creativity throughout the universe, and we're just a mirror image of that. And you see it everywhere in nature, that pairs. And so the point is that how I came to the laser world? Well, investigating this biblical principle, Einstein harnessed the theory of the laser in 1916. How did he do this? Well, he investigated the quantum world and he discovered that he was searching for an answer to his question. How does God, I want to know God's thought. He made a question. He asked, how does absorption work at the quantum level? And we talked about emission with the atomic principle of 2 and 1 and 1 and 2, right? 12 and 21, mirror number. It turns out that when he asked the question, he wanted to know how God did this? Okay, how did the absorption theory work? And the answer he came with 6 months later. He started that question in January of 1916. In the summer of 1916, he got an answer with the quantum theory of light. That was laser light. But it took the scientists 44, 50 years to harness that theory and experiment and verify it in the laboratories. And in 1960, we got what the first ray of the laser, which was a coherent source of light, very different than incoherent light sources. And so he discovered a principle of light, and that was coherency. Now, coherency is very different than incoherency. Most of us are familiar with incoherency, the light we see from the sun, all the external light, the bulb lights, LEDs,
all the external light, correct.
They're incoherent. What that means is that the light is dispersed. It's all over the map, right? It's like a chaotic mind, right? But it's chaotic light. And that, when we discovered coherent light, thanks to Einstein, what we discovered was the most powerful light source in the universe, because the laser is not something just present here. In the magnetic field of the Earth, the Earth produces laser, natural lasers, oxygen laser, and the sun produces lasers. The quasars, which are the most powerful laser stars, produce lasers. The magnetic fields of Jupiter, and they produce lasers. So now we're discovering this principle of coherent light sources all over the universe. But the most important thing that I discovered was that this is what's now empowering mankind to take technology to the next level. You know, and this is why laser became the biblical light for me that mankind is now harnessing for the advancement of civilization. That was the first thing. And education was the second trivium principle that I put together. And that was because education is exploding on the internet now. And by the way, the laser is the...
Yeah, before you go into education, would you pause for me just a little bit on the light? Because I really think this is the perfect time for you to also talk about biophotonics or biophotons for our brain that produces light. Would you pause and
okay.
a little bit with us on that?
Yes. Biophotons in the brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the brain.
The laser, okay, not only is a universal and the most powerful light in this universe, and that we're now harnessing for the whole infrastructure. Lasers now dominate the infrastructure of the internet, photonics. We're getting laser space technology with Tesla and Amazon, and all these got over 40,000 satellites are now beaming laser light to every part of the world, connecting the universe. But the infrastructure of the internet is now converting from electronics to photonics. So the microchips, Intel is producing photonic chips. The photonic world is now emerging. It's the next phase. I call it the laser information age. And now Microsoft just created the HoloLens, holographics. It's based on lasers. And now we can convert our eye into a computer screen. Our eye is the most advanced resolution screen ever seen. No television can compare to the quality of the screen that is naturally given to us in our eyes, the optical lens.
Right.
That system is the laser. Now we have what we call virtual laser, retinal laser displays. Microvision did that in 1990. This was the principle of that Terminator. Remember that eye that it can that's augmented reality. All that started in the 90s, but now it's coming to humanity in general. It's trickling down to all of us. And so the laser now can scan our eye, and the retina is where the photoreceptors in our eye are, and transmit that to the visual cortex where we create our imaging. We no longer will need screens, because with the laser, we can now inscribe all the information on the internet directly into the human brain. Now, this is an advanced revolution in interacting with information. which is coming. And it's already here. It's not futuristic. It's not it's already here. It's been here. Only very few people knew about it. And of course, it's all coming forward. Now, biophotons was another major discovery made in the 70s by a German scientist who discovered that in 1923, there was a Russian scientist who had discovered that the onion, the purple onion, was radiating a certain light. He didn't know what it was. He called it biological light, some name, because he didn't understand the quantum principles behind it. But he discovered there was already, he documented it. But in 73, a German scientist actually photographed it. He created a microscope called a photomultiplier, quantum device, a quantum scientist. And he was able to actually measure, identify, qualify, and classify the nature of this light, this biophoton light that was coming from the onion, the purple onion. And now he discovers that all light, all natural life embodying organisms have this light. Plants have this light. This is where photosynthesis comes in. And then the animals have this light in form of biophotons in their nervous system, which is the guiding information system. It's the most inner information system inside the genetic structure of any animal. And so what he discovered was that this light, this biophoton light emitted by animals and plants and man, of course, is the most coherent light ever. It's more coherent than any laser than we have been able to develop in that laboratory. It's the orderliness of this light is so pure, it's so powerful, and yet it's very weak. It's hardly perceptible. And scientists are now barely coming to uncover this region within the human brain and the whole human nervous system. Every cell, okay, is the dominating light that now we have, of course, a whole region of biophotonics is emerging to capitalize on this. And genetics, biogenetics, photon genetics, all of this is now emerging because now you could literally, you can correct genetic problems with this light. But the most important thing for me in LaserEduLogics is how do the external laser harmonize with the biophoton light? And this to me is the key that will unlock the cognitive. You know, if we have vision correction, remember how they started correcting our vision problems with surgery? Well, now we're coming to laser cognition correction. In other words, all of our problems with assimilating knowledge, because all knowledge comes, or information rather, comes through the visual cortex. 80% of all the external information comes through the visual cortex. And about 20% comes through the other senses, the ear, the nose, the touch. But 80% is the biggest pipeline to the brain, is the visual cortex. And now we can use that channel to bring in coherent light to illuminate the brain's capacities. And this is where LaserEduLogics is coupling with these with Microsoft holographics, and that's the next level of bringing technology to education. Because remember, when we're doing logic and reasoning and we're developing the higher mind, it's a coherent, we're making sense. We are organizing and ordering all the information that's coming into the brain. So that's the principle. And of course, logic, this is where the biophotons in the brain will be activated and work in tandem with the external sources of light, of lasers that are coming, because they have the same frequency and the same nature. This is, again, the principle of alignment that we were talking about, biomagnetics. When you develop your chakras, you're developing your biomagnetic system to harmonize with the geomagnetic system of the earth. So you're in the sun, in the galaxy. So now we're harmonizing our brain functioning or neural circuitry with the external light sources from the laser world, the photonic world that are now emerging. And we're talking about developing a superhuman now. And not just AI. AI is another principle that also comes from computation, and that's also coming from the tribune. Most people don't
Right.
realize the computer has been evolving for over 2,400 years since Aristotle discovered the tribune. The computer, in essence, is a trivium of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And I love the way in French they call it logiciel. The the logiciel, that's what it is. Computer is a logical device. And this logical device organizes the information that's inputted. The inputting is done on a keyboard that has numbers and letters. Why?
That's right.
Because that's the way we codify everything. It's numbers and letters. This
Numbers
is
and letters.
quadrivium, language and numbers. It is the foundation for all knowledge processing. And a computer cannot be a computer if it doesn't have those three devices: an input, grammar, logic, or grammar. It cannot, if it has to be compiled or processed, converted to a knowledge system. And that's the logical device. That's the hardware. That's the hard
And that
And
number
then
system has to come to a mathematics, because that's the
that's the
binary
input.
code. That's the input.
Yes, and that's the input.
Absolutely.
And then the output, you need the display. Without a display, there's no way of communicating that information. You know, it becomes input and process. But no, where's the output? Where's the communication? That's the rhetoric. See, so the computer, in essence, is an evolved system of knowledge. It was created back with the Greeks. Of course, it goes back to Hermes Trismegistus.
Yes.
Egypt, but Egypt inherited from the Babylonians from the, back to the Atlanteans. You could go as far back in history as you want, but it's the same principle. Okay. Yes. And what we've done is that we've honored that tradition, and now we recognize that tradition where it came from. This is why history is so important, and using it for the right purpose, not just to empower machines or to automate everything. No, we're going to bring back this to its logical origin, which is humanity. Okay, as the supreme creation. In the Bible, man was given the scepter. In other words, the staff of power. We were created in the image of God, and we are co-creators. We have all the powers, the linguistic and numerical powers, the creative power. That's why man is the only species on earth that can create in culturally and socially and so many different dimensions, and in the multilingual capability. But it's because we have that linguistic power. And that comes from the trivium and the quadrivium, you see.
Yeah.
So.
And this may be a great place to pause, because you know that you're coming back. You know that we're just scratching the surface here. And I want to get into linguistics. I want to get into the grammar and the absence of what grammatics should be there in our society that we haven't even grabbed a hold of. There's so much more to come, and I wanted to unveil slowly. And believe it or not, an hour passed already. So,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, what do you want to leave our audience with as we bring them forward through the journey of understanding LaserEduLogics until we meet again?
Yes. I am right now republishing my website, LaserEdu.org, where I have all the links and all the resources, the open educational resources that are going to give us all the guidance that we need in this process of publishing this knowledge base, this universally educated knowledge base. This will be up soon. I have a very important person called my son, William Concepcion, who's helping me get this website up as soon as possible. And the book will be published thanks to Dr. Enolia, who's helping me also with the publishing process. And those will be the guiding the guiding documents, you know, to get the full breadth and depth of this universal education system that we're promoting. Yes.
So thank you. We are going to have those links down in our description box as soon as you want to make them available, or we could actually put a precursor date to it, say available after, and then have that information there. But sure. You bring such depth in honoring the wisdom. I'm not even going to call it knowledge, I'm going to call it wisdom of putting the puzzle pieces together to bring forward something, to birth something so needed for society. And as we go through this journey of unveiling each and every aspect of what has been put together and what has been researched, to have birthed this beautiful book and this knowledge-based system that you're bringing forward to our audience, I just want to say thank you, and I honor you. In my eyes, you are Dr. Carlos Concepcion, because what you bring to the table, the plethora of information you bring, it's just so abundant and so beautifully laid out into palatable sizes so that the audience can digest it. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for what you do. And I'm excited to have you on for part 2 so that we can continue, and part 3 or 4 if we need it. Because I want people to get this. It's important. It's important to understand what is available to us and why we're missing things as the masses. And as you go through the iterations of explaining that from a scientific point of view, from a spiritual point of view, in every aspect, I just, again, want to say thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate your kind words.
So this has been another episode of The Infinite Way. Thank you so much for joining us, and please come back to see part 2 of Dr. Carlos Concepcion, and as he unveils and takes us through the journey of LaserEduLogics. Thank you, and see you soon.